Okay, thanks everyone to come in. Hi, Eric, for the first time to Eric to Audit Circle meeting 2. I'll just go into sharing my screen for the agenda. This might take a while to pop up, but to give some background for Eric, the first meeting we looked at the scope of Audit Circle and our, which is all based on a Fund 7 proposal for Audit Circle, what our scope should be and what our deliverables will be. And we decided some things which we can go over today on that. But that's really where we are. And so I'll just start, I'll give some updates at the beginning. We do have a possible secretary role, a candidate. We're currently negotiating that. But in the meantime, if we can share minutes updates between us today, it'd be much appreciated. So just carry on. So on to Treasury. Andre and Miroslav. Is Miroslav here?
Miroslav is here, but Andre is not here. Maybe he's, I don't know. Yeah, maybe he will come later.
Yeah, he'll come later. If you have any updates on Treasury,
actually, we do something from past. I don't know. I think I don't know. Is this connected with this meeting? But we do some connections to GitHub and Gitbook with found proposals from founded 6 proposals, something like that.
No, that's more. This is just to do with Audit Circle Treasury.
Ah,
so,
okay.
Okay, so it's just to see, sometimes we get paid for stuff as we do deliverables for this project. By the way, we get paid for doing that. So it's just as we go forward, as we do deliverables and we do things, Treasury will be updating us on who's been paid for what.
Yeah, we set up the system. Yeah, we are in low start. Anytime anybody needs to pay, yeah, we are here.
Okay, moving on. Thanks, Miroslav. On to town hall slides. For the first couple of times, we haven't been able to do town hall slides, I suppose because of the workload and different commitments that we have. So unfortunately, we weren't able to do town hall slides yesterday. But Ron, you've just updated. You happy to do that now?
Yep, I'm good with that.
Okay, I've done a template here. I'll just quickly show. Oh, there's Randall.
Yeah, I saw there was only 2 slides right now, but so we have to.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to.
I just set up this template here, which because the first time you do the presentation at Town Hall, it should be like an introduction, like who, because no one would have heard of us. So we need to explain who we are, and then very briefly, and then we go into information like that kind of thing. Yeah, but I'll just provide the link to that, and we can work on it in Discord or whatever. Yeah,
sounds good.
Okay, moving on to the weekly newsletter. I was talking to Daniel, and he wants to liaise with different people in the community on updating the weekly newsletter that goes out on Fridays. And that includes a summary of what we do here. So just to bear in mind for this course of this meeting, if you can keep in mind at the end of the meeting, what would that look like? Like a couple of lines, a summary of what we've done today. How can we update people in the weekly newsletter? And so I'll move on from there. A lot of this is admin stuff I'll do at the beginning, sorry. So over the weekend, I flagged, I think, one assessment on our Audit Circle Fund 8 proposal, which basically said, I don't know what this proposal means. And I just said, why are you assessing it if you don't know what this proposal means? And then if you want to look at the assessments that we have had or not flagged, I've left a link there, and I've documented the assessments that we have had. And that's quite a good learning exercise for us to see how people perceive what we do. That's there as well. Last administrative stuff before we get onto the business is I've produced this project board here which I'm beginning to track everything we do, everything that's planned to do, in progress, done, and blocked, and also what we get paid for doing and what is due on what we do. Here's the overview. If you want to look at that, you can look at this in your own time. Here's our iterations. So each iteration of the meeting is recorded here. We have due dates, milestones, and assignees. Is Ron doing the slides. And we have, at the end, milestones. This is the milestones that we have to deliver. So the report deliverable, the retrospective deliverable, and the survey deliverable. Okay, that's just set up so that we can, Justin.
For me now.
Yeah, you had your hand up, sorry.
I did. I was just wondering, kind of like, I appreciate effectively the town hall slides, but wouldn't that make sense to combine that with a breakout room in the after town hall?
Possibly. The question there is who's going to do that and who's going to resource that.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'm happy more or less kind of to once it's clear when we're on. I mean, the question is, would it make sense, and that's an open question to the community, kind of to have an after town hall room for the next few weeks running, also to underpin the survey as such, because that's kind of like a censoring of what the community actually is thinking and what they would like to see, so that we could collect it that way also.
yeah, as I say, possibly.
We had
Possibly we could do that. Someone would have to take ownership of that and it be resourced. It's not in the scope of the Fund 7 proposal that we have. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The point in itself is more like the proposal says we have a report, and then it more or less kind of, you can do it through a survey, you can do it also through effectively after town halls to sense effectively what people kind of say. Yeah.
Okay, if you could hold that thought, because we're getting on to that subject now.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Sorry to do that, because I just want to keep on, because we have limited time. Thanks everyone for waiting through that administrative stuff, and we're getting on now to more what Torsten's talking about, which is the scope and deliverables. And I've merged what we said previously. So, you know, broadly it's defined as, firstly, as survey. It's called survey deliverables here. And I'll just briefly summarize what we focused on last week. Okay, so we can change this, but this is what we decided last week. That was the funded proposal reporting system, so on the funding proposal reporting system we focused on, and then we looked at 3 possible approaches to that. Qualitative data gathering, which I think, Matthias, you were going to go away and do and come back. Google form design, which is, you know, something to do, and what that would look like, and another qualitative approach, which was raised by Joe, and also related to challenge team interactions, like where do we go for what is the human face, I suppose, of the auditing side. But that may relate to what you're talking about, Kirsten. Yeah. So if I can just open this up in terms of, first of all, do you want to, because it was an action, Matthias, do you want to talk on that?
Sure. Yeah. So I started on the work, gathered some qualitative data, had a couple of side conversations, but most qualitative came from a conversation that I had yesterday with Victor Corsino. Long story short, just looking at the summary of my notes, is that we found out that reporting right now is deemed as friction. It works well for the proposer because at a smaller scale with not too many proposals, in that we can report and we just get the funding, right? Mission accomplished. But in the conversation, it became clear that there's really a lack of benefit to the proposer. So there's essentially a short list of things that Randall, I'm looking forward to your reaction on this. What we essentially discovered in this conversation, that reporting should help in various things, and at no particular order. One is marketing, right? The second one is internal progress report. Third one, solicit helpful advice and or partnerships. And also what it's supposed to do right now is keep proposers accountable. And then there's also a bonus in that excellent reporting should have additional bonuses, right? And so those are the high level outcomes of what reporting should look like.
Is there a way you can paste all that into the notes here?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
will add
Just,
that.
I mean, I can tidy it up later so people can read it. So,
Yep.
yes. And then maybe we can discuss that.
I see Phil has his hand up, but
Oh,
Randall
Phil.
also had some reactions. So maybe.
Just very briefly, I love that we can make reporting something that's good for everyone involved. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you.
I thought of the extra bonus. If you were going to do such a thing, you'd probably want it to not be part of official Catalyst, but it could be something that this circle could run on a quarterly basis that has an excellent reporting or reward, and we can look for funding to do that. And that would
Yes.
make sense.
So the idea was also we were without going too deep into that right now, because this is just one data point, right? But possibility in the future, not with the resources right now, challenge teams could possibly something. And we have a couple of discussions in terms of marketing and those extra bonuses, that this is essentially gathered and the reports are really analyzed, and you can highlight through various channels that are specific to, let's say, maybe games or tokens or whatever it is. And you have hopefully, hopefully we can build that up from the community. Nori talked a little bit about that in the past as well, right? But then also potentially support of Cardano Foundation, IOG, Immorgo, something that IOG is already doing to highlight some really well done projects, couple of ideas, but that is in line with essentially the idea of incentivizing like good reporting, which ideally, of course, is also auditable, right?
To speak to those points, Phil, I'm just trying to see the order on my Zoom screen. So I think it's Phil first.
I've got more to say about that. I guess part of the other bit that you were saying for marketing, we currently have an ideas fest. There could be a report fest, giving the opportunity for proposals to give updates outside of the town hall, because there's kind of a bit of timing issues there, and also
yeah. So
yeah.
To respond quickly to that, I'm actually thinking of this to be a weekly occurrence if you wanted to, especially if you work on more. If you do this full time, you have a couple of proposals. Chances are you have something to report, whether that be a breakthrough, just update for developments, your struggles, right? Or just trying to reach out, what you're trying to do with the proposals Mantis Marketplace, Phil, right? You're trying to connect people. And this is another opportunity that could also lead into that. So it's not just an opportunity, look how awesome I'm crushing it, but it's also an opportunity. It's like, hey, we expected XYZ, for example. In our case, for example, right, we were naive and it's like, we expected the PAB to be ready by the end of last year, right? And now, in addition, it's like, okay, how do you solve that? Like, has anyone tried to implement with this PAB that actually did not come from ING, but from a partner or somebody else, right? So there's a lot of opportunity to making this, I guess, more interesting and also more essentially building in public. That's what I'm thinking about. So there's probably many ideas. I don't want to harp this discussion, but I appreciate it.
Randall's just pointed out.
Yeah, sorry.
become
If
a
I could
burden.
just go to Randall, who
Yeah, sure,
hands
go
up now. So, sorry, Randall, would you like to speak to that?
Oh, I really like that idea of having fluid opportunity to report in and be accountable, but weekly just sounds like too frequent. I know George has had his hand up for a while here too.
Yeah,
I don't
George.
think it would be compulsory though. It would be voluntary, I'd say.
A weekly opportunity sounds nice.
Yeah, a weekly opportunity. I don't think you could make such a thing compulsory.
Subject to having actually, never mind. Sorry.
We can come back to that. But yeah, if you can think of that. George, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, just a final one maybe to add to Matthias's list of 4. I think one of the best things that reporting can do is also just be like a call out for, this is my blocker. I could do with help in, the PAB is not ready, and then someone goes, oh no, there's actually this community one that's been made over here. Like, have you seen this? Like, as a really collaborative way to find, the root of your problem and solving that. So there's a way of collaboration and problem solving for whatever because there's always something that's blocking you, whether you don't have access to a designer or this or whatever. If that is very clear and that data is very easy accessible, whether it's a tag, let's say we've got all the reporting in Catalyst, and then there's a tag that says we're having problems with design, or we're having problems with the PAB or whatever, then you have this really easy access point to be like, I can go and help them, and maybe they're going to pay me, or I'm going to get some sort of credential for reputation building, all these different dynamics you can introduce. So I think that's the way we make this massively collaborative when we have that open data. So I think I would just add that to it, but I thought the list was pretty comprehensive. But,
Great. If I could circle back to Randy again. Got your hands up still, or you? Sorry, I'm just looking at the hand system. So, Phil, you got?
Yes.
Yeah.
I need to recall what I was going to say about something.
Okay.
Give me a second.
Okay, we'll give you a second. Okay, so as I say, Matthias, if you can either supply the text for that report or paste it in here, I'll tidy all this up and we can read it offline if necessary. Against the limit of this item, Ron.
I was just going to add one thing. I think this is a good idea doing this, but it seems more for like the proposer side. And I saw somebody threw up a comment about who's the engaged audience here. So I don't see as many like voters reviewing this like in this like collaborative sense. I think like what voters want to see is just just simple like dashboard metrics, like something visual where project statuses are. So if we can get that as a deliverable from those reporting like meetings, like those weekly things, I think that would be a value add for the voters.
That's great. Okay. Thanks everyone for on that point. If we have,
could I quickly jump in there? Steve?
Go on.
It's interesting that IOG and the challenge teams are kind of all operating these talks in secret, right? Like they're designed so that the reporting entity, the proposal can get feedback without making it public, right? So what we're then discussing is an extension to that to say, what do proposers want to do if they want to do this publicly? Because they're meant to monthly report to the CT teams and that sort of stuff, right? Which is an opportunity to engage one-on-one with somebody. But what we're discussing here is how can we expand that to be so that
expand upon that, Phil. Do you mean, is this a confidentiality issue in terms of how can we utilize that information?
Well, IOG is very cognizant of that some projects are working on things that they don't want to be announced at a certain point. Right. But as a result, because I kind of imagined that the CT teams would be running these events with other proposals and discussing things in a group way, but the instructions given to CT teams was one-on-one discussion for confidentiality. So that's where we're currently sitting with the CT teams for Fund 7.
Right.
But then that's not in line with the open community, open information, open discussion ideas that some of us are here for. So I guess IOG as the company is kind of making sure that reporting and that the information they're extracting into their systems is what they need. But some of what we're discussing and some of what Matthias pointed out can be more of the open, checkable and public discussion, which is important for us as a oversight group. How can we encourage that to happen? So very good points.
But by the way, just directly after this meeting, on the hour is a challenge team round table, I think. Is that right? So if I'm not sure where the invite's gone for that, it might be in Telegram. So if people are interested in what Phil you're just discussing, we probably should go to that after this meeting. It's been, we can't really discuss this much, but I suppose there it's about, I think this came up last meeting, it's the issue of how we haven't quite resolved this issue, I think, of how we can use what's existing in terms of the challenge team's interaction with funded proposers to how that can develop onwards, I suppose, is the general issue. Moving onwards to Google form design and implementation. This was kind of discussed in general terms last time. The idea was to commence work on this after Matthias had done, thank you Matthias, by the way, for doing that. Vanessa and Phil, are you kind of provisionally put your hand up for that last week, or the week before, I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago. Are you still interested in doing a kind of form design based on Google, and what would that look like?
Yeah, I'm still up for that, yeah.
Okay, so
I'm also happy for that. I guess I'd like to know what the outcome of that is. What information are we trying to gather?
And I'd also like to know like when we're hoping to do it by.
yeah, I mean, on deadlines, I mean, I can talk a little bit to that, because I think I discussed it with I think Vanessa offline about this as well. We have and also to give context to people who are new to this, new to the meeting, like Randall and Eric, is we have an overall deadline officially for the end of May to produce a final report on audit processes. You know, so we're supposed to do surveys, retrospectives, and then a final report on current problems and what we see for auditing in Catalyst. But that is the tight deadline. But we have a kind of a month leeway, I would say. So we probably could push that to maybe the end of June. But in terms of deadlines, that would mean we have about a month or so to do surveys from now, and then another month or so to do retrospectives, and then another month to do maybe a report, like the 3-month thing. So just to sort of that, in terms of deadlines, that's, you know, does that answer your question, Vanessa?
Yeah, that sounds about right, yeah.
But I suppose what we need to decide together as a group is, what are we surveying? And where, you know, so, but I'm leaving this open to, you know, the group here. In using that kind of survey approach, I mean, the Google form approach. No ideas on that?
Like, I guess maybe what the community perception of current and future auditing could be. Like, how's the perception of the proposers? How's the perception of whatever broader community we have around the place? What's the perception of IO? I don't know.
Yep.
But the community as a whole, how is auditing currently stand, and possibly some future direction understanding.
Okay, and we do have a brief to survey IOG. This was called internal surveys in our original proposal. So if we want to survey the IOG term, we can.
I almost feel like it's a unified survey, just asking from your position as a proposer, from your position as a community member, as a voter, or as a, you know, the various aspects of this community that people have aligned themselves to, and each person could answer multiple times in as a different, wearing a different hat, maybe. Like I as a proposer and I as a voter care about different things, let's say. And that could be interesting information to gather.
Yeah, it'd be quite good to get people to submit it several times with different hats on, rather than trying to aggregate it all into one form for themselves.
I mean, in there, we could include information, questions about the role of an oversight group.
Right.
So whether the awareness of our existence before the survey was there,
Right.
And what sort of things that oversight group could be responsible for.
I don't know. I kind of feel that's a different survey. Do you know what I mean?
Could just be one point with a few quick questions, maybe. But yeah, it could be a different survey as well.
Can we make this provisionally deliverable for the next 2 weeks? But I won't expect to, but you know, between
A draft, yeah.
between you and Vanessa.
Okay.
And then you can discuss that. What I've got some notes here, like I think you've done some survey design as well, Vanessa, haven't you?
Yeah.
So like how, and then you can also think about how we can implement that. You know, well, I suppose it's, you know, how we can promote it at town hall, I suppose. That's the other thing we could do.
What I'd find useful before we move on, rather than people like suggesting how the survey should be structured or whatever, I'd just like to hear from everybody if we could just do a quick go round. What is it that you want this survey to find out? And then we can design one that will find that out.
Okay, go round.
I mean, I like the idea of, sorry.
Go ahead, Ron.
Okay. I mean, I was just gonna say, I do like the idea of having the survey from different perspectives. So even if you are the same person, having from a voter or proposer perspective, I think is good. But I think would we want to have like regular survey questions that are just really quick and easy that can serve as data points that we can track over time, so we can kind of see like as like a problem sensing group, like when something spikes up, if there's just like somebody just said something about risks. I mean, if we had some questions designed to capture those kind of data points, I think that would be good over time to see if anything changes where we could sense that as a problem in the community.
Are you particularly interested in risk questions, Ron? So do you think we should ask specific, because I know that you've mentioned that before, I think in the original presentation, an audit working party, and it's often not something that is highlighted particularly well. So how do you think could we track, how could we frame a question about risk that would be general? I mean, be general and straightforward. You know,
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, I have my own ideas, but
can I interrupt, because we ain't got a lot of time in this meeting? Could we please just focus on what we want to find out rather than how we're going to frame it? Because then Phil and I can go off and talk about that.
Okay, what we want to find out. Okay, so that's one perspective, risk. Eric.
Yeah, just commenting on that. So like usually when you're talking about audit, you're doing it for a purpose, right? So we're implementing some kind of audit procedure to mitigate some kind of risk or some kind of issue. So getting an idea of what the community finds riskier, what they think is a potential problem with Catalyst, it helps you to decide how we're going to model an audit program to try to mitigate those problems, right? So in a survey, we could ask things like, for funded proposals, what do you think is the biggest risk, or what do you think is the biggest concerns that you have as far as projects getting funded? People give you your responses back, and then you think of how would you improve auditability to address the concerns that people have there. Or with reporting, what do you see as the biggest risk or the biggest issue when people are reporting each month? people give their opinions, their thoughts on that. And then you would design an audit program, or you would design auditability improvements to assess or address those things specifically. So like by going through and asking people, what is it that you're concerned of, we could break down the different aspects of, from proposals to funding to, all the different things that we decide. But by finding out what people are concerned about, that's how we would improve the auditability of it, or design a program to improve how we address those things.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good perspective on what we're trying to achieve, Eric. I agree. But I think Vanessa's also saying, I mean, maybe we can do this on Discord as well, actually, is to say, if we can start to say what those questions are, or if you can do a document, Eric, say, for example, like say, okay, what I mean is ask this question, this question, this question, that's what should be in the survey. And then, or are you talking more about how the survey workflow should work?
I think that's coming up with what we would specifically want to ask in a survey. So like if we're reaching out to the community, to whether it's funded proposers, like you guys were saying, they would have a different set of concerns or a different set of ideas, and the general ADA community, but asking for, when I talk to people in my day-to-day, one of the things that comes up a lot, how are we ensuring, like if we're funding $500,000 for this category, how are we making sure that people are building them? That's a risk or a concern that people would have. So you would think of different audit procedures that would address that, or, how are we keeping tabs on people every month? What is the process? But by designing a survey to ask for those things, that's how we would hone in on what the community cares about. And that's how we would design or think about how you would improve auditability in those sections. Because like, unless you know what people care about or what they're concerned about, it's hard to know what we should be trying to improve the auditability of in the first place.
Okay, that's great. Vanessa, did you have your hand up, or?
I did, yeah. I was just going to say, whilst I really like what Eric was just saying, I do wonder if our focus should be completely on what the community cares about audit. That sounds awful, I know, but a lot of people don't know much about audit, and what they care about is just that things are done fairly and that people don't get away with money that they're not accounting for. So we're just going to get hundreds of replies that basically say that. I think we need to think a little bit more carefully about exactly what it is we want to find out from this survey. Otherwise, we just end up with however many replies we get going, I care that people don't get away with money that they're not entitled to. And what can we really do with that?
I suppose that is some kind of information we're getting. I suppose I suppose there is the issue of the utility of that information. I'm not sure if you've had any experience with that, Eric, in terms of gathering information already. I know you're doing risk factor stuff on, I've seen your stuff on Twitter that you do with the flagging and stuff. But maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, as far as the data gathering, not too much. I'm sure we could design a program for it, but specifically what you were saying, Vanessa, I agree that the average person's not going to have a good understanding of audit, or I wouldn't expect them to be able to provide solutions for that. But that's why it's more of trying to get an understanding of what people are concerned about, or what they see as being, I use the word risk a lot, but what people are concerned about or see as potential problems that Catalyst might have. And then it's up to us to come up with suggestions or improvements of how we can improve the auditability in those sections. So if people are concerned that people aren't going to be reporting their data accurately or their progress accurately, or when a project is closed out, people are concerned that those are actually being checked on to make sure they're closed out or not. People would say what they're concerned about, and you look for common themes, and then you would design ways that we can improve the visibility or auditability or, things around that.
Can I just really quickly reply to that? I think what I'm trying to suggest is that maybe in the survey, we can give people a little bit more information or ideas on what they could say in terms of what issues we're trying to get them to talk about. If we just say, what's your concern about risk? Then
we're gonna get answers all over the board.
No, but this is what I'm saying, is that if we try to give them a little bit more information on what kind of information we are asking for, rather than just saying, what's your concerns about risk? They're just going to go,
Okay.
I don't
So
think
if I could just go over to Matthias, because you had his hand up for a while. Sorry.
Yeah, I would like to answer Vanessa's questions, and thanks to Eric and Randall digesting Eric's insight. I think, because I was also very focused on the proposals, but I think the overall goal here is, how is the reporting helping challenges to be successfully implemented? Because by the end of the day, we don't care about individual proposals. I mean, of course, the proposers proposers do care about themselves and that their proposal within a specific challenge gets implemented and it meets those challenge goals. But ultimately within Catalyst level higher, we look at challenges, right? So I think maybe reporting will look towards successfully implementing the challenges. And I think that also will lead to what I spoke earlier about, what I found out with Victor, that we have still the need and connection and merging proposals at any stage and making Catalyst and ultimately Cardano more useful. So maybe raise that level.
That certainly fits into the current direction of the challenge team direction. But so I just want to say before I go back to Ron, Eric, there is a Discord server that we're part of now. I'll send you an invite to that where we can have conversations about this. If you're amenable to that, I can send you an invite, Eric.
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, Ron, and then if we can move on to the next item after you, if you can.
Sure. I was just going to wrap up with what Vanessa said, because I think what Eric is saying is valid, but I think we do need to have like a more directed, like maybe we have a bunch of different risks listed and then they can rate on those different risks that are listed, and then we can take some direction from that on improving auditability processes. Right. What do you think of that, Eric?
Absolutely. I don't think we should just send a survey that says, what do you guys think is riskier? What are you concerned about? I think Randall gave an excellent example right here where we would come up with what categories or break down the different categories for them. Like, how satisfied are you with the amount of accountability present in Catalyst process? How satisfied are you with, but breaking down the different categories of the different processes and framing it in a certain way. So it's not just an open-ended question of what are you concerned about, but like specifically when it comes to reporting or when it comes to projects being funded or whatever it is, we'd have to put a little bit of thought into it. But I think we could design it in a way that it's not just open-ended and broad, it's getting things that would be useful for us.
That's great. I'm ready to just move on if you have a very short point, Phil.
Sorry, I'll just quickly address what we'll do with Vanessa is we'll do a bit of a start and then we'll post and maybe other people can join us
on Discord
so that we can take this out of this and discuss it.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Thank you.
And I mean, it'd be great to get more activity going in the Discord server so we can also, that's kind of self-documenting as well. So move on to the last thing on that we need very briefly on, which was raised last time by Joe, which is more the human, I'm not sure if I can do justice to what Joe was saying, but she was talking about the human side of auditing, like where do I go to find a human being to talk to about auditing? And also actually, funny enough, I think Torsten, you were kind of speaking to that a little bit, weren't you? Because when you were mentioning maybe we should have a series of after town halls, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I mean, all the points which have been discussed, I agree with. What ticks through my mind is kind of like, how do we catch actually the needs and expectations? Because when you do audit, you don't do that for a purpose in its own rights or means, but you have a number of interested parties, which we already identified that there are different ones. And how do we meet what they want to get out of it from an audit perspective? Yeah, and I think normally a dialogue helps in this context, because it might be that with our survey questions, we are right, but off the mark, or there are topics which we just don't sense yet. So I would put that element into that, not taking the survey away, that has an 100% chord, but the point is kind of how do we catch effectively the edge, the French of some people.
And that might be a way to resource this in terms of our deliverables, because what we could say, we could say the problem, there is a problem sensing aspect to survey, okay, Torsten, and we will address that by doing these after town halls.
Yeah, and we can do recordings and more or less kind of just try to summarize them.
Would you like to, I mean, I can help you a little bit with that, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's do that for And also it's going to depend on what's happening after town halls the next 2 weeks, obviously. Okay, but you know,
Yeah,
so-
well, I mean, at the end of the day, it might be that it's kind of an absolute runner, or it kind of dies hard on it because no one is really interested, which also could happen. But at least you put it out, and then people have, at least for a period of time, a forum where they can raise their voice. Yeah.
Okay, we'll frame that as from a resource perspective as survey, research or prep, because,
Yeah.
And does anyone else like to be part of that?
Of designing the survey?
No, this is participating in an audit after town hall in the next 2 weeks.
For Pacific Town Hall, I might also, if that there's an opportunity, it's a lot less frequented, and I'm not sure how many funded proposals there are, but I would definitely like that space as well.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to figure out timings, and because I mean, I must say that I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks in the after town hall, so we need, if we do the work on that offline on Discord, that's a kind of quite a nice approach. Does anyone would like to speak to that kind of human interaction element of the surveys? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay, the next section, that's the first milestone, if you like, surveys, and that's to be delivered in the next month or so. The next one to be delivered in the next 2 months or so is organising retrospectives and and workshops, which last time we had these suggestions, so I've tagged these as planned actions or possible things we could plan to do. I think the first suggestion was from Matthias, and that's to have a kind of office hours conversation with Pacific Town Hall or other town halls and communities. Is this something you would like to run with more, Matthias?
Yeah, I would like to start that next week. Pacific Town Hall is every other week, so next week, Wednesday.
Or Pacific Town Hall?
Yeah, and I'm gonna talk to Nori about the possibility because he's hosting that. Hosting with that.
Okay, that's the action for that one. That's great. Using TikTok for asynchronous updates. This was Nori and Matthias again. Would that be part of that conversation?
Yeah, so yeah, Nori mentioned that also publicly, so we can attach his name to it. He also, in some of the other works that he's been doing for Gimbal Labs, he also mentioned Loom, right? But the question is, how big do we want this to be? Should it be just for people that are already in Catalyst, which obviously TikTok wouldn't be a good idea, right? So the question is really, what is the purpose of doing this async? Is it just for reporting, or is it maybe to get other people interested in Catalyst and what the hell we are doing here? Because by the end of the day, we're one of the largest, if not the largest, innovation fund. So if we want to do the marketing for that and bring more people into Catalyst, then maybe something like TikTok might be a good idea. I'm not sure.
I suppose it's also how it fits into our deliverables, but obviously we
Yes.
can, yeah, okay. I need to ask that question.
Yeah, so that is essentially kind of the deliverable there would be just giving us a couple of suggestions, potentially, things to look into and pick up to then ultimately maybe in a next funding round or whoever wants to pick up this work to actually implement the changes, just what has happened before with the report.
Okay. I was going to sort of time. Sorry, we have to sort of close that. So, excuse me. I mean, another thing we picked up is in terms of how we could do retrospectives and workshops. We've already looked at the Pacific Town Hall. There's the after town halls. We also talked briefly last time about using coordinating meetings for retrospectives, and we had a little bit of discussion on that. Do we have any more concrete ideas about that briefly today?
I heard that they're stopping the breakouts or something like that, or was that just the CT breakouts from the coordinator?
I'm a bit confused about what they're doing.
Yeah.
Does anyone else know? I mean, I'm not clear. maybe that's something we can ask, actually, is the direction of the coordinated meetings. I mean, because they seem to be optional. Not many people seem to be turning up. So it's how can Audit Circle use that is the question.
Just as an aside to that, I think it might be useful for us as an Audit Circle to find out if that's true, that people are not turning up, not finding them useful, blah, blah. That would be really useful information.
Yeah. So, you know, that's true, actually. I might be completely wrong there. I probably am wrong. So, you know, useful information for the status of, because that is an audit issue, I suppose, isn't it? Well, it is an audit issue of the coordinator meetings. Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, go on.
some people even in this group have mentioned that it's not that useful to attend all of them. So I think that's something part of it as well.
I'll try and clarify some of that with Danny and others, or try to get some answers to some questions on what's happening with that, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, we're coming up to the last 10 minutes of the meeting. The final deliverable is researching, preparing, presenting the report. And obviously it's going to depend on what we've done before here. So everything we've done before here will be reported on and then presented in some way in a report. Possibly we could do it maybe as a kind of a presentation at a town hall, and also a document as well, that kind of thing. All I was going to say is that I can start work on a template if people like, or if anyone's got any ideas about how that should be presented and how should it be formatted.
I like the way you do it.
You were very shy about town hall yesterday, Phil. What's going on there?
Oh, I don't have the mental capacity to sit and present something at this point. So
it's a stage fright. Okay. Well, I think George would be excellent at this.
Yeah, I worse. Like, you know, I can't speak any faster than I do already, but stage fright gives me that adrenaline to go 5x. It's a bit of talent I have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to start putting together like a space, just to kind of like some rough, so that we can get an idea. We don't have to completely start from scratch. That's all I'm going to do. But then my initial idea was just to prepare that, and then we will then I suppose we have to do a closeout report anyway, because this is a proposal. Maybe we could incorporate the two. So we could do we could either do that as a video, or we could do it live. So it's quite straightforward, really. And so we're actually under time, which is amazing. But any other business, or we could have feedback on the meeting. If anyone has any feedback, what you'd like to see changed.
How are you seeing the progress of this group and this project?
Going well, I think.
Yeah.
I'm also running, doing community governance oversight on the other weeks. But
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot you were there as well. Yes, and some other people. But no, we are quite focused, and it's quite interesting how it's developing. How I think this group's quite creative in terms of how it's handling the scope of this. I'd be interested to hear from people who are new here, like Randall and Eric. What do you think of what's going on here?
It's a good group of people. Like, I feel like a lot of the times I'm lost, and I don't want to say like I'm not sure what we're talking about. But I think as time goes on, you learn more. Like, I'm not as experienced with like Circle and the implications of that, and our overall scope, or what we're able to implement. So just a lot of things it's confusing to me, but I like this meeting. I thought we talked about some good stuff and had some good ideas.
And I appreciated the moments when there was a really clear focus on the objective over the technique, and like being able to capture what the purpose and objective of some activity would be, I think is really valuable. It's easy to get tied up into, well, this technique versus that technique.
Yeah.
And really chew up a lot of time.
That's great feedback. Thank you, Randall. Phil, you got your hand up, and then George.
I think, Eric, we're all in that same boat. We don't know what we're doing, so don't worry about that. There was a point that I'll just drop it in here, but I don't think it needs discussion at this point. But there was a point brought up in the governance group of how do we get to be here? And in the future, how do other people join, or that sort of question of like, if we're here doing something, there's a reason for us being here, but how do we communicate that, and how do we allow others to come in if they want to, and that sort of stuff. So it adds a bit of complexity, but it's a kind of something that needs just some thought over.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the landing page on governance oversight. I did I updated the landing page to refer to issues of legitimacy and participation. Okay. And if you could, we're listening the last 5 minutes, but if I can just maybe ask you to go away and think about this, everyone here. In my view, this is my view, okay, so you can disagree. What legitimizes this is the fact that we were funded and voted for. And in our Fund 7 proposal, we had a list of names of who's participating here. So that's how I would answer questions about legitimacy. There is the issue of participation, which is how does someone participate? Like Randall, you weren't included in the original proposal, but you're welcome here, you know. But there's the question of resourcing, you know, because in the original proposal we resourced the members. So there is that issue. So open to discuss this, and maybe we can discuss it further in Discord. George.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go the kind of 4 points Matthias brought up earlier, and that kind of extra point I brought up. I thought those could be interesting things to consider for this kind of form that Vanessa and Phil are looking at. And potentially there might be even considerations to certain information. Asking the same questions to everyone might not be the way for certain things, maybe like the marketing side, maybe, I don't know. So having things that are more tailored, and I'm obviously not thinking about this in any depth, but there may be some areas where it's worth asking the proposers, but not worth asking the community, just because, like, you know, they really don't care. But yeah, I think it'd be great to take that into consideration, and all of us reply in the Discord and kind of just to start hashing it out async, because it is something that you could spend 10 years talking about.
Yeah, and also, I mean, how this group operates, I mean, because it's proposal led at the moment, which is quite interesting. And we've got a Fund 8 proposal in which is supposed to hopefully all get funded. And, you know, so that's, again, if people here can bear in mind that if they can promote our proposal and, you know, just get the word around, if they vote for it, then we'll still have a job in 3 months' time. You know, so, and then how do we manage that? If we come around again, if we get funded again, how do we include people? I actually increased the budget for the Fund 8 proposal to 10 participants from 8, for example. Yeah, so that's something to think about. But we're kind of coming to close now. I think Matthias updated this time. I think the time is 1600 UTC for the next meeting, which in British Standard Times, that's 5 o'clock. I don't know what other times that is.
I believe UTC doesn't change for daylight saving, but I believe that then, because it doesn't, everyone, like,
I think I'm just going to leave the Google invite as it is. Have you received that, Randall?
But I think it means that Matthias is attending an hour earlier or later, whichever way that goes. Yeah, is that what's happened?
I'm not sure.
So the meeting said 17 UTC, right? But we have 16. We started the meeting at 16 UTC. So the question was, well, do we keep it at this time or an hour later?
The rest of the world doesn't change though.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? I also looked at this at UTC. So the confusion came this morning or yesterday for me. Actually, it's like, okay, well, meeting said 17 UTC, the agenda, but my Google Calendar said 16 UTC, right? So it is at 16 UTC. Is that fine with everyone, or do we need to adjust? Because I'm okay either way.
Yeah, I'm okay as it is at the moment. For some reason, last week we had a little question about reorganizing so it's more convenient for all of us, particularly Eric, to go back an hour. And we went back from 1800 to 1700, but somehow it's gone back to 1600. I don't know how.
That's
And-
because when you set it, we weren't in summertime, so it was 1700 UTC, and now it's not.
But UTC doesn't change though.
So it wasn't set to UTC, it was set to a local time.
It was.
Then. Okay, got it.
Okay. But what I'll do, are you happy for me to add you to the invite, Randall, on the Google invite? Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, I DM'd you my address.
Yeah, sure. So that hopefully will sort itself out for the next meeting, which will be on the 14th of April, and we're in the last minute, so I'll just stop the screen share. And thank you everyone for coming and participating. And